Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I want to welcome everybody to the City of Statesboro's second annual development forum. I want to thank you for joining us today as we embark on this exciting new venture to strengthen business in the City of Statesboro. We are striving here today to make Statesboro the #1 city in the state of Georgia to do business. This session, and I guess you all know, it's divided into two different sessions, one at 9 and one at 10:30. The initial session will last till about 10. Is that correct, Jim? And then we'll break for a little bit and we'll come back and have one at 10:30. So it is my hope that you will join us for both. The City of Statesboro partnered with Retail Strategies in the fall of 2013 to perform custom research for Statesboro as a regional hub for commercial and retail development, and to assist the City of Statesboro, and the local development community in identifying and positioning ourselves for retail and commercial development opportunities. Today we will hear the results of the study that has been done by Retail Strategies. I'm going to introduce you to Chuck Branch of Retail Strategies. He's here on my left. Chuck is the CEO of Decision Data Resources, LLC, and is a co-founder of Retail Strategies. Chuck has many years of experience in data collection and analysis for commercial and industrial site locations, as well as extensive experiences in commercial site analysis and tenant selection processes. Please join me this morning in welcoming Chuck.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Good. Now, be patient with me for a minute. It usually takes me about a minute to get the nerves past, and then I'll be good to go. We're extremely excited to be working in Statesboro. Lots of opportunities. We think there's a story that may have struggled to be told, and a lot of that's going to center around Georgia Southern. Being from Alabama and being a University of Alabama football fan, there you go. We're going to spend the next 45 minutes talking about Alabama football. Although I was talking to one gentleman just a moment ago, Georgia Southern gave us our toughest game a couple of years ago.
Go Eagles!
You've seen a transformation in Tuscaloosa over the last several years as the story of the student population became woven into the story that they were telling to developers and retailers. There's over 1 million square feet of new retail development taking place in Tuscaloosa, and a big part of that was being able to convince those developers and retailers that the student spending dollars were not being captured and the student population was not being captured in the data that was available. I'm going to focus this 9 o'clock session more about entrepreneurial opportunities and growing existing businesses within the market. The 10:30 meeting, we're going to focus more on the real estate community and how they can take that data and work with property owners and developers and retailers that would come in from outside the market. Now, I like to make these discussions and presentations interactive. If you have a question in general, raise your hand and interrupt me. If you see something on the screen that prompts a question, interrupt me. But we're going to spend a few minutes going through a couple of PowerPoint slides, and I'm not a big PowerPoint fan. And then we're going to switch over and actually show you some of the reporting capabilities and the outputs that we've created. A couple of big picture items first, and that is vacancy rates. Y'all want to move so you can see? Okay. And I'll move around, sorry, I'm not a standstill type of person. Vacancy rates, this is an ICSC report that comes out quarterly. The most recent data is from Q4 2013. And you can see that in all of the different categories, pretty substantial vacancy rates. And as an old Alabama coach used to say, that's an opportunity. That means that there's space for people to open their own businesses. That means there's space for people to expand their existing businesses, and that means there's space available to recruit national retail and regional retail into the market. Chain store sales by segment. And you can see that they're growing, not growing rapidly. I'm not sure the economy has completely recovered from the recession, but it is growing and starting to stabilize. Current trends. Everybody familiar with all these names? Every one of these companies is either downsizing or considering downsizing. See if I can use this pointer. Dice. It's a discount fashion retailer. Announced last week they're closing every one of their stores. Sears, closing stores, and it's really become more of a real estate play. JCPenney and Kmart. I know you got a JCPenney here, but those companies are downsizing. Walmart, who's surprised to see that name up there? Goldman Sachs came out with a research report the other day that said Walmart needs to close 500 of their supercenters across the country because they're now cannibalizing each other. But the funny thing about Walmart is they have another retail component, which is their Walmart Neighborhood Market, which came out last week and said that they're looking to open between 300 and 500 new stores. Radio Shack, closing over 1,000 stores in the next 12 to 18 months. Statesboro just filed for bankruptcy. What is happening is these national chains have gotten to a point where they've lost control of their inventory, they've lost control of their customers, they don't understand their customers, they're not responding to the needs of those customers. And what does that do? That creates an opportunity for local. All of these other big boxes that are still expanding are looking to do smaller stores. To me, that's an opportunity for boutique retail within a community like Statesboro to take advantage of those spending dollars as those bigger boxes are closing down. I got to get up here where I can see a little bit better. Y'all excuse me. So from a retail perspective at the local level, how many people in here this morning own their own retail store? How many people are thinking about opening a retail store? We got to get y'all more excited about retail. My wife owns a children's clothing store. And even though I'm in the data business, she struggles with understanding who her target customers are. She thinks that, okay, I open a store and word of mouth is going to bring people in and they're going to buy those goods and services. So one of the things that we do from a research standpoint is help people identify who's my target customer. Oops, sorry. Where do my customers live and work? What are their buying habits? We have very detailed data, what we call consumer behavior and attitude, so we can tell you the propensity for people within a market to buy certain goods and services, or how many times they bought a particular good or service in the last 12 months, which then leads to what products and services should I offer? Do I have the right product mix within my retail store? Who are my competitors and where are they located? If I'm thinking about opening a business or I'm in business, I better make sure I know more about my competitors than they know about themselves. And how do I market my store and services based on the product offering trade area? How do I reach out to that customer base, make them aware that I'm in business, and draw that traffic into my store? So, from a resource standpoint, we use a lot of this information. We think that the local level retailers and business owners and franchisees should be using the same information. YP.com, Yellow Pages. Used to get the thick book. They still throw one in my driveway and it goes in the garbage can. You go to the internet, you go to YP.com, you enter a retailer's name, it's going to show you, one, if they're in the market, and if not, it's going to show you where the next nearest store is located. Google, the ability to research your competitors and research the market so that you can identify the opportunity within Statesboro. Info USA, this is a customer marketing firm. If you're a retailer, you're a franchisee, you're an existing business, you can go to Info USA and you can have them customize a marketing list. So my wife can go to Info USA and she can say, I want to target households that have children between the age of 2 and 10. And they can build her a custom marketing list that she can then turn around and do direct mail. Market research, which is what we're about to start talking in the next few minutes. Retail strategies. We're working with Mandy and her staff about how we're going to make all of the research that we've created available to the community here in Statesboro and to the existing businesses within the market. Real estate. Work with a professional. How many realtors we got in here this morning? What does everybody do? If you're looking to open a business, if you're an existing business that needs to expand, make sure you're working with a professional that can walk you through that process. And then social media and email marketing, it's about getting the message out to your customers. My wife, for the first 6 years she had her business, never started a mailing list. She started a mailing list. She got their email addresses. When she would send them an email about having a special at her store or a discount or new products came in, her revenues went up. And it's sort of like my kids. They do it right the one time and then they go back to doing it their way and they can't figure out the difference between the two. So every time she would mass market through email, her sales went up. So I keep trying to convince her that she needs to be mass marketing all the time. Franchises. There's a great opportunity within the Statesboro market for franchise opportunities. A lot of the retailers that we've identified, particularly in the restaurant sector, are going to require a franchisee to be involved. And the problem with most expanding retailers right now is they can't find qualified people who want to be a franchise owner. Not a very good mechanism for matching franchisees with franchisors. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But these are all different franchise resources that local entrepreneurs can look into and identify franchisees that are looking to move into the market. All right, let's talk about the results. So we spent a lot of time over the last several months looking at the Statesboro market from different viewpoints. And what we can do from a research standpoint is we can break the market down by radius areas. We can look at travel times or drive times. We can look at custom trade areas. We can look at the city, simply the city boundary. And as part of that process, we also went and looked at who are the competitor markets to Statesboro, who might be pulling those retail dollars away from Statesboro, where those dollars should be staying in the Statesboro market. So from a research perspective, we're looking at demographic information. We have about 8,000 variables on every geography in the country. And our geographies go down to block groups and census tracts and cities and towns and counties and zip codes. But we're looking at age breakdowns, we're looking at household wealth, we're looking at disposable income, we're looking at the different categories within each of those sectors, we're looking at socioeconomic data, we're even looking at weather data. You'd be surprised at the number of retailers that want to know weather patterns because it then helps them as far as product and service offerings within their regional stores. Tapestry. Tapestry is a segmentation system. 65 different segmentation groups. So we can go in and tell you how many retired wealthy households are in the market. We can tell you how many young urban professionals. We can tell you how many people are living paycheck to paycheck. We can tell you how many people have young children and they're saving money because they're going to be going to college in the next couple of years. And so we've looked at the market from a tapestry standpoint, both the household and the adult segmentation groups. And a lot of retailers will use that information to match this market to other markets where they've been successful. And then retail spending. We spend a lot of time looking at the household dollars in each of the consumer expenditure categories. So I can tell you how much the average household spends on clothing and going out to eat dinner or breakfast or lunch, or how much they spend on different items within the grocery store. We've got about 1,500 variables on all of the different consumer expenditure items within a household. What you don't see here, and what we're going to get to in just a moment, is we also spend a lot of time doing peer analysis and gap analysis. Peer analysis lets us take the Statesboro market and identify every other city in the country that looks like Statesboro from a demographic standpoint. Once I've done that, I can then look at the retail that's within those peer communities and identify retailers who have shown a propensity to locate in similar cities and towns. And then gap analysis, we're going to show you the dollars that are either coming into or going out of the Statesboro market. So radius, everybody familiar with radius rings? It's simply X number of miles from a starting point. And in a moment when we jump over to the base camp system, which is Mandy's access to all of the data, you'll see that we've created this type of research for all of the different retail areas within Statesboro and Statesboro as a whole. But that's a 3, 5, and 10 mile radius there. And so you can see how far you have to go to reach those outer limits. The one that we started focusing most of our thought process on, not only in Statesboro but throughout the country, is drive time. How many people get up in the morning and say, oh gosh, I got to go to the grocery store, it's 4 miles away. I get up in the morning and I say, I got to go to the grocery store and it's 5 minutes away. So we measure where we're going from a retail perspective by time. And so these are drive times, and this one is a 5, 10, and 20-minute drive time from downtown Statesboro. But we can create these trade areas at any level. I can go as small as a half-mile radius and a 1-minute drive time, all the way up to 500 miles and a 4-hour drive time. So we have a lot of flexibility in how we look at the market, and different retailers are going to require different trade areas. So here's just a very quick snapshot to give you an idea of the difference between doing radius versus travel time. So 5 miles, you can see up here, 41,000 within 5 miles of downtown Statesboro, and the median household income and the number of daytime employees. There's our 10 mile, and then as we come down into our travel times. So I actually capture more population within a 10 mile radius than I do within a 20-minute drive time. But retailers are going to want to know, how far do people have to drive to get to my store location in Statesboro versus going to an alternative trade area or an alternative city. Custom trade areas. So we also have the ability to go in and hand draw our boundaries. And so if you went back, and this one's based on taking a 30-minute drive time and realizing that those areas that are within that drive time, let me go back and show you something. All right, so for example, if I'm looking at it, this is 20 minutes, but all of the households in this area here may not fall within that 20-minute travel time, but they're still going to be using Statesboro as their primary retail and shopping destination. So what we do when we create these custom areas is we take that into account, that we can capture additional population, households, and income from those areas by creating a custom trade area. So this is a this is our custom trade area for Statesboro, and all of a sudden now you can see where within the regional trade area of Statesboro, you're capturing 145,000 people in population. I can guarantee you that 95% of the retailers that have looked at the Statesboro market have never looked at this market from a regional standpoint. They've never studied that Statesboro is the primary retail destination for all of these households within that custom trade area. So one, it becomes our job to put together the marketing materials and the information, speak to those retailers, transfer those prospects over to the local commercial realtors, and explain that the market in Statesboro is much bigger than most of their research has shown. Tie that into adding the Georgia Southern component, where nobody, I can almost guarantee 100%, haven't focused on the student population and the amount of dollars the student population have to spend. Households and change, you've got a growing market, and then you've got your income levels. We tend to focus primarily on average household income and disposable income when we're putting together our marketing pieces for Statesboro. Here's another example of what we're looking at. This is just going back to that 20-minute drive time. And look at, and the reason I put this in there, look at the growth that's going to occur over the next 5 years within 20 minutes of Statesboro. My guess is what you're going to see with Georgia Southern going Division I, student population is going to continue to increase. And what happened in Tuscaloosa, they went from 18,000 in student population 20 years ago to now over 35,000, and they're headed to 40. And as that student population started to increase, and they started bringing new industry into the Tuscaloosa area because of the university, more and more of those students are making Tuscaloosa their home after they graduate. So you've got growth that's occurring, and again, it's our job as part of the results and part of the work that we're doing is to identify that growth and then relay that message. And I keep talking about retailers and recruiting. All of this is an opportunity for people to start their own businesses. Yes, sir?
So how did you guys collect this information? Did it come from like a Nielsen-style database? Did you guys go out and do surveys and hand collect it?
Don't do surveys. Too costly and too time consuming. We use a bunch of different data sources. We have access to all of the census data. We have access to a couple of for-profit vendors. So there's a group called Applied Geographic Solutions who provides us our current year estimates and 5-year projections. We also use data from a group called ESRI. We use Claritas. We have used PopStats in the past. PopStats is a unique database that does updates on a quarterly basis, and they do it based off of postal service. And so their data occasionally allows you to capture growth or a decrease in population much quicker because, I'll give you an example, if you've got a major apartment complex that's bulldozed, they're able to capture that you've lost those P.O. boxes or you've lost those postal drops.
Right.
You got a lot of, in Statesboro, we've looked at the pop stats because you got so much new housing taking place with the student population.
So they fill in the gap between what Claritas collects on a yearly basis.
Exactly.
And then, okay, because
Yep.
we use Claritas at the city campus, and I'm looking at this
Yep.
line. Some of this looks really familiar.
Yep. Claritas is probably our primary source for our gap analysis,
Okay.
but we also use other sources there too. And then American Community Survey, BLS, BEA, all of the different government sources. And then we also have access to MRS, Consumer Behavior and Attitude data. We use both Mosaic and Tapestry for segmentation data. So if there's a data source, we've either used it or we've studied it to determine whether we want to use it. All right, so these are reports based on the different trade areas. This particular report is a consumer behavior and attitude report. And this is based on home furnishings. We can tell you within the last 12 months how many people within a given trade area bought these different types of furniture items. So if I'm thinking about opening a furniture store, or I own a furniture store, I'm going to get with Mandy's office and I want access to this data. I want to know, am I capturing my fair share of all of these purchases that are taking place? And if not, what do I have to change from a marketing standpoint to capture? So in the last 12 months, these are households, sorry, not individuals, but households. 8,273 households bought a new mattress or box spring. 3,767 bought some type of bedroom furniture. 4,138 households bought some type of children's furniture. So that's going to help me from a product mix. It's going to help me from understanding my market. It's going to help me understanding how I need to market to my customer base. And I can tie all this back to number of households, population broken down by age. For instance, if I'm going to focus on children's furniture, if I'm going to add additional children's furniture items, I want to match that to the number of households that fall within certain age brackets. Or I want to market to the households that specifically have children. That goes back to that Info USA database. When I call Info USA or I go online, I want to trim down my list of potential customers focused on a particular category or focused on the goods and services that my store offers. Sports and fitness. There's a huge gap for a major sporting goods store. There's also opportunities within that sector for boutique sporting goods operations. So I can go in, this is just a snapshot. There are approximately 60 variables in this one report. I trimmed out just a couple of them. But these are a number of individuals that participated in this sports and fitness category. So there are 5,922 individuals within this given trade area that do some type of bicycling. There are 9,354 individuals in this given trade area that do freshwater fishing. So again, whether it's somebody local that's going to capture this, or whether we're recruiting somebody from outside the market, a national or regional retailer, this is the information that they're going to use. Once they've decided on a site, they're going to use this information to determine what are we going to stock that store with. Fitness and walking, exercise. 15,000 individuals do that on an annual basis. I am not one of those. Lawn and garden. Again, this is just a snapshot of the data. But you can see these again are a number of households that are doing some type of purchase related to all these different products. So if I own a local hardware store and I don't offer lawn and garden items, this may present an opportunity for me to expand. A couple of quick examples of some successes we've had in other places. In Mountain Brook, Alabama, we had a hardware store, did not offer wallpaper, decorating, or paint. We did a gap analysis for that community, identified that there was a gap in that category. They took the contiguous 1,500 square feet to their existing location, added wallpaper, decorating, and paint services. In El Campo, Texas, we had a retailer, a big box retailer, that based on our research, realized there was a gap in fashion retail. Their concern was that another competitor might come into the market. So they've now expanded their store by an additional 15,000 square feet so that they can offer additional fashion products and services. So as an existing business, this research that Mandy's going to have and make available is going to allow you to look at the products and services you're currently offering and identify opportunities to offer additional products and services. Consumer attitudes. If I'm somebody in the Statesboro market that has a boutique women's clothing store or a men's clothing store or a children's clothing store, this type of attitude information is going to help me better understand how to stock my store and how do I grow my own business. And a couple of things that stood out to us here. Whoops, sorry. Make my clothes last a long time. That means they want high quality stuff that's not going to go out of style. There were a couple in here. Top designers making quality clothes. Clothes at a discount just as good as a department store. Have a conservative dress style. Welcome to the South. But that plays a factor. Now, this type of information too would be, if we're going to talk about George Sutton, I'm going to get ahead of myself. If I were looking to open a store, any type of retail store in Statesboro right now, I would be all over the student population. I would be trying to identify styles and products and services that the student population is going to be purchasing. And I would target and cater to that particular market. We've created these types of maps, and they'll be available through Basecamp and for Mandy to determine how she wants to distribute those. But this is about identifying retail that's currently in the market. If I'm thinking about opening a new location, if I'm thinking about expanding my business, where are my competitors located? And when you're thinking about opening a business or expanding, it's important to know this. If I'm going to open a business in a certain category, and I've got a competitor that's sitting on a major thoroughfare, and most of my customers are going to be driving past my competitor before they get to me, I'm not making a good site decision. I've got to get, we talk about it all the time with big boxes, and one that really plays, everybody familiar with Cabela's and Gander Mountain and Bass Pro Shops? A big part of their decision making is that I want to make sure I cut off the customer before they get to my competitor. Well, even when you're doing small boutique shops, or you're opening your own business, or you're expanding your business, part of your thought process should be, how do I cut off my competition when I'm deciding on where to locate? Gap analysis. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about this in the 10:30 session. But we go in, based on all the different trade areas, we can identify a gap. How many people in here are familiar with gap analysis or leakage? The research guy, probably the GIS guy. What we're studying is the dollars that are being spent by households in this market and are leaving and going elsewhere to spend those dollars. How do we bring those dollars back into this community so that that sales tax revenue is staying in Statesboro? Now I'm showing you the big gaps. These are the gaps that we've identified that justify recruiting regional or national chains. And I highlighted two of them. And that's because in these two particular categories right here, there's a tremendous opportunity for local entrepreneurs and local business owners to open stores or restaurants in those categories. And that comes back to this whole idea on the restaurants of franchise. And what you're starting to see from a lot of these restaurant franchises is they want to speak to current franchisees of other restaurant concepts who have shown that they can be successful. They don't mind that a franchisee owns different concepts. But we've identified this as the number of retailers and the potential square footage that can be brought into Statesboro. But I wanted to put this up primarily because of these two categories right here. There's a tremendous opportunity in those categories. A young entrepreneur that opens a women's clothing store, if you can generate between $500,000 and $1 million in revenue, you're making a pretty good living if you're a sole proprietor running that business. Restaurants. There's opportunities out there where there's existing restaurant space that's empty. You can come in and redevelop it. There's going to be opportunities for out parcels. But the big thing is a lot of those restaurants that come in, particularly on the quick service side, they're going to be looking for franchisees within the market. All right, now these are some of the smaller gap categories. So in addition to looking at gaps that are large enough to recruit regional and national into the market, there are smaller gaps that present an opportunity to open your own business or expand your existing business. So if I'm in the outdoor power equipment business, there's still $1.4 million in spending that's leaving this market and going elsewhere. That could be that there's not enough or broad enough products within that existing business. It may be a marketing issue. It could even be a site location issue. Cosmetics and beauty supplies, great opportunity for a young enterprising woman or couple to open their own business. There's women's clothing again, hobby toys and game stores. And I may be speaking out of turn and hopefully don't hurt anybody's feelings from Georgia Southern. But Georgia Southern has a great reputation, particularly the football team. When I came over here the first couple of times, one, I did not go out to the campus, but I couldn't find a store where I could go in and buy Georgia Southern merchandise. There's an opportunity for somebody to open a store that focuses on not only Georgia Southern. You're not going to make a living off of just Georgia Southern in a store, but you'd be surprised at the number of college kids who are buying replica jerseys for every sport. My son, who never played soccer, has like 8 different European soccer jerseys hanging in his closet. And they're buying those either at a local store or they're buying them off of the internet. So it's about offering the opportunity. Everybody in Statesboro, I'm sure, wants a University of Alabama football jersey. Florists. There are lots of florists, I'm sure, in the market, but there's still $700,000 worth of expenditures that are leaving this market and going elsewhere. So that may be a marketing thing. And that's one of if you take anything away from this, it's that the research that Mandy's going to have available is going to allow business owners to better understand the market for their goods and services. How big is my market? How far out can I go to capture new customers? And then once I identify the number of customers, how do I market to those customers? Let's talk about economic drivers, and I'm focusing on one, Georgia Southern. There's your enrollment demographics. I got this from Dr. Brown's report. And if you haven't seen that report, I would suggest if you're a researcher or somebody, you need to make sure you dig into that. University of Alabama did a survey similar to, I'm sure, what Dr. Brown has done. And they found that 80% of the students at the University of Alabama have their own credit card. They found that 25% of those students with a credit card have a spending limit of at least $2,500. 10% of the student population at the University of Alabama has a spending limit on their credit card of $10,000. Now, part of that goes to, and I think Georgia Southern's probably doing the same thing, is where are you targeting those students? Where are they coming from? Are they coming from the wealthier neighborhoods in Atlanta? Are they, in Alabama's case, they're coming from Atlanta. They're coming from the D.C., Virginia area. They're coming from Dallas and Houston. Bottom line is, kids today have a lot of money to spend, whether it's coming from mom and dad or they're going out and getting a part-time job. I've got one that just graduated, one in school and one going. Money burns a hole in their pocket. That, to me, is the number one opportunity in Statesboro, and that's targeting those students and opening restaurant locations and opening retailers that target those students. Additional information. Here's the initial spending by the student population. Here's the output impact. Every dollar that is spent by a student at Georgia Southern, there's another 40 cents being spent by other people within the community who are benefiting from those student spending dollars. Frank, where are you? I apologize. I'm getting old and I can't remember things. The store that you've got right across from the entrance.
Pardon?
The store that's in your space right across from the entrance.
Talbot's?
Talbot's, sorry. Talbot's is a great example. If you went to Talbot's and said, come to Statesboro, and all they did was research the Statesboro market without looking at the student population, Talbot's wouldn't be in Statesboro. They're there, and they're located where they are because they're capturing that student spending. And I'm going to open it up for questions. Let's see what time it is. I got 20 minutes for questions.
The median household income, does that incorporate the students as well?
It does not.
Does not?
No. Census doesn't. The only student population that will typically be captured in census data are those that are from the Statesboro area, or those who have made Statesboro their permanent residence. And we tend to focus more on average household income than we do median, and then also on the disposable. And then you may have seen there was a slide in there that actually allows us to break down how much of the household dollars are being spent specifically on retail versus non-retail. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I can't interrupt, Mayor.
Yeah, you can. Are you saying then that the vast majority of opportunity here, not excluding the gap analysis that you're going to share with bigger developments,
Yep.
should be targeted towards Georgia Southern students? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I think that has to be the primary component in the selling, or the reason for it. You've got a core market, but I think that it's the underserved market at Georgia Southern that's the icing on the cake. If I can create restaurants and I can create boutique fashion or whatever products and services those students are buying, if I can create that store concept based on that demographic, I'm going to still get buyers or customers from the core demographic, but what makes it a compelling revenue generator and profit potential is the student population.
So does that translate also, when you're talking about restaurant franchises coming here? I mean,
Yep.
Are we a target for them?
Yep. In some cases, they'll identify a franchisee that's in other markets. They may be in Savannah and want to open multiple locations, and so now they're looking to expand into Statesboro, Hinesville, Augusta, or it may be Atlanta. We've had several conversations with both individual quick service restaurant concepts out of Atlanta that may have 3 or 4 locations and now want to have 10 or 15. And so it's, as they mushroom that development, it's identifying which markets. And when you can identify a market like Statesboro with the core demographics and then add that student population component, there are restaurant concepts, and I apologize for going back to Tuscaloosa, but It's the idea that you've got a community that's now leveraging their student population. In Tuscaloosa, they're talking to restaurants that never would have looked at that market based on the core demographics, but are now looking at it because they want to capture the student spending dollars.
So what would you guess would be, if you were going to say that from a restaurant franchise standpoint, let me just put a disclaimer up here, I'm not looking at a restaurant franchise. But this market could tolerate an additional 5, 10, 2, what do you think?
I think that we're looking at probably 5 to 6 on the quick service side.
What is their average volume of those restaurants?
I think a successful restaurant, the ones that we've spoken to date, are going to be looking to do somewhere between $1.2 million, $1.5 million in revenue.
And the gap is about 6 million.
Yeah. But I'm going to say this in the next presentation. Gaps are a starting point. Retailers aren't going to make a decision based solely on whether there's a positive or negative gap. There's a lot of retailers that make decisions because they believe they can pull spending dollars away from their competitors. A lot of it's going to be about location. You got the 2 corridors that run on each side of Georgia Southern. Mandy and I have had numerous conversations. We're trying to come up with a plan and talking to quick service and fashion retailers that we want to try to fill that gap between the Georgia Southern site and downtown. If you look at what, again, Tuscaloosa, and you can look at it in Birmingham with UAB, you can look at it a lot of college campuses. It's how do you connect downtown with the university campus? And ultimately what Tuscaloosa has done is they've gone out and recruited those restaurants. And they've said, we want to be in downtown because we've got a core daytime population that's going to use us for lunch. And then we've got the student population that's going to come to that area at night. And so we think there's a tremendous opportunity in Statesboro for some redevelopment along those 2 corridors and for new ground up development. And there's also opportunities, I won't mention this one specifically, but Mandy and I have talked about it. You've got some concepts that are in other parts of Statesboro that may be looking at opening second locations within the same market. And again, entirely because they want to capture the student population. Did I answer your question? Yes, sir.
Chuck, I don't know if you can reconcile this or not, but, and I know we're getting into gaps later, so
With the realtors, yeah.
I get it with the restaurants because people cannot order food except locally on the internet.
Yep.
But how do you reconcile the money that's spent in these gap reports that's done on the internet because the students do it at 2 a.m.
Sure.
and they have 50,000 dresses to choose from
Yep.
compared to a local dress store?
Yep.
I would, looking at a dress store or a men's clothing store, I'd want to know how much of that business is being done on the internet compared to just going to Savannah to pick it up. Is there a way to reconcile?
We have a category in our gap reports that breaks out online sales. And then we have, one of my partners has been in the real estate business for the last 20 years. And so we leverage him and his team's experience on the impact that those online sales have. Now, I order stuff online. But what I found is 9 times out of 10, I'm repackaging it and sending it back because it didn't fit. So I think you're going to see more and more of these web-based or internet fashion retailers particularly, who are going to start tying themselves to local store. I mean, they're going to have stores in the market. In fact, you're now starting to see even the big boxes that let you, like Best Buy and even Walmart now, you order it, but you go pick it up at the store because they want you coming through and having to walk back there, pick it up, and the chances are you're going to purchase something else as you're walking out. So we do take it into account. We do mainly on the big boxes, not so much on the boutique, because in my opinion, boutique sells themselves primarily from a service standpoint, ease of access, and particularly, this is what my wife does in her store. She never carries more than 3 or 4 of any item, so that when you are driving around town, you don't see 20 kids wearing the same clothes. And so that, if I'm opening a fashion store in Statesboro that's targeted student population or general population, I want it to be boutique in nature, not something that you would typically go purchase on the internet because you want to try it on and you want it to be unique within the market. Yes, ma'am.
Did your gap analysis reveal anything with respect to grocery and food sales, that sort of thing?
Oh, yeah. Let me go back. Sorry. There's a $56
Oh, I'm
million
sorry.
gap.
It's hard for me to see back
That's
here.
okay,
I
it's hard for me to
apologize.
see, and I'm standing up here. Yeah, and we've had quite a few conversations with grocery operators, and that even comes back to talking about franchises. They call them operators in the grocery business, but we've had some discussions with grocery operators in the Savannah market that are looking to expand and might consider Statesboro. Somebody else, I'll go with the gentleman in the green shirt.
What about entertainment, as far as like, are we missing a big sector for people leaving Statesboro for entertainment opportunities that are in, you know, Pooler, Savannah, that type of area?
Sure, just because they're bigger markets, we have the ability to look at entertainment data as a sector. The problem is that most entertainment companies are not going to look at a market that's this size. And again, that comes back to, and in fact, we have a couple of meetings set up when we go to ICSC out in Las Vegas with companies in the entertainment sector. And again, it's going to be about showing them that if you go in and look at research, these retailers and corporate entities look at a lot of the same research we look at. And when they look at Statesboro, they're looking at census demographics and some estimates and projections. They have no clue that Georgia Southern's sitting there with 21,000 students, because they're not drilling into the market at that level. They don't have access to that report, or at least they're not going online looking for it to understand the student spending potential. Everybody, who all in here is familiar with ICSC? Okay, so one of the things that we do on behalf of Statesboro is we go to all of the ICSC meetings across the country, and we meet with retail concepts and developers. We've identified at least 2, possibly 3 developers who are now looking at the Statesboro market for either small, I hate to use the word strip center, but small retail developments, restaurant developments, and we actually have a partner that is aggressively looking at the market for an apartment complex. But we will meet with those retailers, and on the restaurant side, that's where we will identify restaurant concepts, but their first thing is going to be, I need a franchisee. And so we struggle with how do you identify franchise operators within a market. And that's where typically they'll go to somebody that's a franchisee of a different concept in another city nearby that wants to have a second or third concept.
So Chuck, is that something that we could share with you? If someone in our local community was interested in becoming a franchisee, could we communicate that to your team and so you all
And then,
could help make
yep.
that connection?
Yep. We have chambers that we work with and cities that we work with that will actually offer franchise training sessions. They'll bring people in and say, okay, here are people that have franchise operations. This is what it's going to cost you to be a franchisee, and try to match them.
That's not just necessarily for the restaurant training.
It could be
That
anything,
different-
anybody that's doing a franchise operation, but it's typically more restaurant related. You got a question?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to see the Georgia Southern stuff up there, because it's one of those untapped markets that I've noticed all throughout the research that we've done in looking at different things. But I guess my bigger question about that is, I noticed in one of your slides that the Georgia Southern enrollment is starting to fall off or flatten off a little bit. Certainly not hoping that happens.
No, we don't.
But let's say that does happen. How does this affect the plans that you guys have laid out so far? Because we can see total and the undergraduate are starting to slow up a little bit.
Yeah, and this is through 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the decision to go Division I was made in about 2013. You'll be amazed at the growth that's going to occur because you're now Division I. The greatest thing that ever happened at the University of Alabama from a student enrollment standpoint was Nick Saban showing up on campus. Because kids want to go where they can experience that whole football atmosphere and everything else. It's probably time for an update of these numbers. You know, we can go online and get them. I need to get a card from you because it'd be great to share some information and find out what you know. I'll be shocked if that number's not turning around and going up and is closer to 22 or 23,000 in the next couple of years.
Okay.
On these numbers for enrollment, maybe Georgia Southern can answer that, but this question, how many of those are online students versus traditional on-campus students?
I don't have access to that information.
Very few, very few.
But based on the number of apartments being built, I would say very few.
That was one of the questions, Joey, that we worked with, particularly last year when we did the development for on the apartment complexes and student growth, is we asked Dr. Thompson, Dr. Brown, how many students are 100% online versus how many have a physical presence in the community. And it's almost, I mean, it was just a handful of students that were exclusively online at that point.
I also think it's noteworthy, and I don't know the statistics, but I think during this period of time and even past, that though enrollment seems to be flattening out, I also think the entrance requirements
Sure.
have increased as well.
Yep. So you'll end up with a higher quality student.
You mentioned 2 corridors that you thought were right, for lack of a better term, for
Yep.
development. Can you be specific as to exactly what those 2 corridors are? You said they were around Georgia Southern.
Yeah, I have to apologize. I've lived in the same community for 20 years, and I still have to get directions to go pick my kids up from somebody's house.
We've talked about Fair Road
Thank you.
and South Main.
So those are the 2 that you targeted.
Well, that's
Tell
2
where-
of 5.
2 of 5.
Yeah, you can, I didn't include it. If we have time to go online, we've actually outlined some corridors in addition to those 2 that we think are right for development and redevelopment. And in some cases, repositioning. There may be a higher and better use for some of those properties by moving some things to a different location and then backfilling the traditional retail. Yes, sir.
Chuck, did you look at it from a pedestrian base, being able to go and walk to type of businesses versus getting in a vehicle and driving to it?
We have not, but I just licensed a software solution that lets me create a walkability score so we can create those reports going forward.
How are we doing, Chuck, as a local business community? How healthy are we? Are we poised for success? It looks grim. I mean, you did all the data, all the
Sure.
research. Sum it up for us, please.
Well, you're doing the right thing from a planning standpoint with this right
So
start.
we hired you. And the right start.
Thank you. And I appreciate Georgia Southern backing up the data. Yes, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. And a lot of times it's about telling a story and coming at it from a different direction. It's what we did in Tuscaloosa. And that was the retailers and the developers didn't understand the student market. And so Dick's Sporting Goods, which never would have considered going to Tuscaloosa 2, 3, 4 years ago, is building a new location as part of a major development. Fresh Market never would have thought about going to Tuscaloosa. But the student population tends to be a healthier population and is looking to purchase healthier food items. And so Fresh Market is now opening a location. I think the best thing about Statesboro is a lot of these big boxes are now coming out with smaller concept stores. So where a Dick's might have done a 40, 50,000 square foot box in the past, they're now opening 20 and 25,000 square foot boxes so that they can get into these smaller markets and capture those dollars. So, one, I think you're on the right track. Tremendous amount of opportunity. Georgia Southern is going to be an asset, and then we think there's some redevelopment opportunities where you've got some old storefronts that need to be spruced up, and you've got some empty, vacant restaurants, particularly on Main and Fair Road, that if we can recruit and we can tie Georgia Southern to downtown, it becomes a very robust corridor. Yes, sir.
What is the population of Statesboro versus Tuscaloosa?
Oh, Statesboro from a core demographic is probably 40% of the Tuscaloosa market. But again, in Tuscaloosa, it was about going and identifying that custom trade area. And the Tuscaloosa market actually reaches all the way over to the Mississippi boundary and down, because there's no real competitor except on the northeastern side, which is Birmingham. And so it was a really large trade area of about 280,000 people. That's why we created that custom trade area that has almost 150,000 in Statesboro, because there's no competitor in those outlying communities. Those people are either driving past Statesboro to go to Pooler, or they're driving all the way to Macon, or they're driving to Augusta. And so it's about identifying that opportunity is here and creating local retailers. When I say local, bringing in a national big box who says, if I can capture that market and they've got to drive past me, I'm going to put a store location in Statesboro. And it's about, like Pooler. Pooler is probably your primary retail competitor. So what we've got to do is identify what retailers are in Pooler versus which other retailers are in those categories. And that's part of our initial target, is going after those retailers that are in the different categories so that they can capture those dollars and keep them here without them ever getting to their competitors in Pooler.
I actually think we were some inspiration for Google, if we had some of the things that they now have first.
Yep.
Maybe we're being a model to look at too.
Yep.
One more question for
Sure.
you. You mentioned that there were several communities that you looked at, identified as being very similar to Statesboro. And I think there's several focuses going on right now. One is the South Main project.
Yep.
That are doing the same type things. Who are some of those communities that we would most like?
I don't have them off the top of my head. I've got them in the research, and there's actually a peer analysis report that Mandy's got. But I apologize. Didn't memorize those. Yes, ma'am.
Back to your vacancy rate slide,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see, I wanted to identify it. Does that include the downtown area on some of those? What was that central pool?
Yeah, that's a national vacancy rate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We have created a property catalog, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about at the 10:30 meeting, is that we need every broker and property owner to send us that information. Because what we tend to do when we go to these ICSC meetings is we know the parameters the retailer's looking for, and we can then customize our package, our portfolio, to sit down with that particular retailer and identify specific sites. Too many cities are going to these types of meetings and calling on retailers and saying, hey, we're a great community, we've got a great quality of life, you need to have a location. And that retailer shakes their hand and smiles and says, oh yeah, we're going to take a look at it. If you don't go to them with specific site options, with the economics, what's the lease rate? Can I do ground up construction? How quick is the permitting process? If we don't have all that information, we're wasting our time and we're wasting their time. Yes, ma'am.
Chuck, what's the best way of putting the two entities together? You know, we know we have empty storefronts, we know we have businesses that would benefit from the Statesboro market.
Mm-hmm.
We know we have franchisees or local business potential owners. What is the best way for our community to put those two together?
A lot of it's us communicating with Mandy and vice versa. It's us communicating with the local brokers. So for instance, we went to an ICSC meeting in Atlanta, met with a developer who's now looking at 2 out parcels at one of the developments for restaurant concepts. We've got another one that's looking at a healthcare concept. So we've gotten the information from that particular broker on those sites. And once they say, yes, we want to take a market visit, we connect them with that broker. If we need a developer coming in, we might have them come and visit with Mandy when they make their site visit. So it's just about communication. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
In this downtown areas that you're talking about, that you've identified like Fair Road 67, you relate to other communities like Madison, Athens, Auburn, Anderson, South Carolina. A lot of these communities have been successful because of their regulatory incentives from a governmental standpoint. For instance, in Athens, created the entertainment district where they lowered the incentive, created great incentives for downtown, lowered the alcohol laws in certain walking distance of the downtown area. Have you studied those, or can you give us some ideas from that?
Haven't studied those because it's not our expertise, above my pay grade. But it is something that I believe the city needs to look into. And that, to me, if you're going to create a robust downtown environment, it's going to have to be somewhat targeted at the student population because of proximity. It's going to be about convincing, I don't want to say name brand, but exciting brands coming into the market from a restaurant concept. It's going to be about your existing retailers in downtown, making sure they're offering the right products and services. We work in downtown Augusta, and I had one of the local shop owners call and said, hey, you know, we're excited about you working with us. We're excited about your research. And I didn't have the heart to tell her, it didn't matter how much research I give you, the fact that you're carrying 1950s and 60s era fashion, nobody's going to buy anything. So we're going to let the city tell them that. I do believe that in creating entertainment districts has been key to the success that many of our clients who have robust downtowns, it's been the trigger to help them bring in additional restaurants and entertainment venues. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
What about the proximity of Georgia Southern, where it's located in proximity to Main Street and downtown area? I mean, is there any correlation about having Georgia Southern, since it is a major entity and it generates a lot of revenue around here, getting it to come this direction?
We probably need to take a couple of people from Statesboro over to Tuscaloosa, because the university started taking they were making such a low return on their investments, putting them in CDs and treasury notes, etc. They started buying up property between the campus and downtown, and because they want to redevelop it. They know that that's one of the primary gateways to the campus is coming through downtown, and they want it to look a certain way. They didn't want a bunch of run-down bars and buildings that hadn't been fixed, and so they started buying up the property. The other thing that Tuscaloosa did, and we see it in other, but UAB's done it, is they created a tram system that picks up students and gives them, if you create an entertainment district, the last thing you want is those kids coming downtown and then driving back. So they actually created a transportation system that loops downtown in with the campus, and that it runs till like 3 o'clock in the morning. The other thing that they did, I don't know if Georgia Southern has it, but they have called Bama Bucks, and you have to spend X number of dollars per semester. Well, the campus has now gone to the restaurants and allows those on-campus dollars to be spent at local restaurants.
What's the proximity of Alabama's campus to downtown?
10 blocks. Not too much different than it is here.
Okay.
You're maybe 30% further.
So it has roughly the same proximity, the same dynamic?
There's a lot of redevelopment that needs to take place, and the university wants to drive that instead of having local people drive it. They just don't want to. They don't want people coming into campus, parents particularly, who are coming to visit campus and maybe considering their children going to school there, and all they see is a row of bars that abut to the campus.
And when did that start, Chuck? When did they take that position? And
probably 5 years ago, and it's probably got another 5 years before they'll own enough to make a difference. But their big thing right now is they want to take the property that they own and redevelop it with fashion retail and national restaurant chains.
the university itself wants to do that?
Yes. Now, they'll go to a private developer to do it, but they control who's going to do it. That way they can control the process.
So they felt it was that important.
Yes, I mean, you have 3 gateways into the university campus in Tuscaloosa. 2 of them have been redeveloped. This is the last one between, and downtown has exploded in Tuscaloosa. And it's because of tying the campus and creating that transportation system. And they started creating downtown housing options for students.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Retail Strategies. Thank you all for coming this morning. I hope you will stay with us. We went a little over, but we'll have another presentation at 10:30. You'll hear a little bit of the same information, but some brand new information we offer to you this time. So thank you, Chuck.
No,
Appreciate
thank you.
what you brought.